Hello, Booktube, and welcome to another weekly reading vlog. Well, I don't know if anybody noticed or not, but last week I missed the weekly reading vlog. It was the first time I've missed it in 88 weeks of doing this. So part of me was reluctant to miss a week. I had this streak going, and I wanted to keep it going. But the other part of me just had to acknowledge reality, especially because in the coming weeks, it's going to be inevitable that I'm going to miss some weeks. We're going to be doing some extended traveling during the Vietnamese New Year, the Tet holiday, as it's known over here. So there was just no way I was going to be able to keep that streak going forever. So I decided last week was as good a week as any to break the streak. Yeah, not to toot my own horn, but I think 88 weeks of consistently giving weekly reading vlog updates is somewhat impressive. There have been weeks when, there have been some weeks, moving apartment, having a baby being born during that time, working some really busy weeks at work, having 3 jobs and 2 kids, and all the stuff that goes with that. Now, granted, not all of those weekly reading vlogs have been of quality. There have been, and if you've been watching this channel, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There have been vlogs in which I just turned on the camera, said, hello, welcome to another weekly reading vlog. I'm too busy to talk. These are the books I've been reading. Goodbye. Videos like that. But I have at least made an effort to keep it going during that time. But as busy as that time has been, it has also been a time in which travel had been restricted. So Vietnam had closed its borders for 2 years, which means it was very difficult to get in or get out, which means we couldn't visit home and we couldn't have people from home come to visit us. But that has all stopped for the moment. Not knock on wood that there's not a new wave with the next variant or something. So I am currently at the moment hosting my parents for the month of December, which is yes, and then we're going to be traveling near the end of the month, and then like I already said, in January we're going to be traveling for Vietnamese Lunar New Year. So I thought to myself, okay, well, obviously, if you're traveling, you get, what's the word? You get a free pass on doing the weekly reading vlogs. You don't have to do the weekly reading vlogs when you're traveling and you're out in the countryside and you have no access to a computer or internet or any of that stuff. And I decided it was also reasonable to give myself a pass on any weeks I was hosting people. So my parents are over here, my parents are actually, we live in an apartment, which is not terribly small by Saigon standards, but not terribly big either. So my parents have been sleeping in the room that I usually use to make this weekly reading vlog, this room right here. So, I couldn't kick them out. I guess I could have, but you wouldn't, right? So yeah, I've decided to count hosting people as kind of the same as traveling. Whether people are traveling to you or whether you're traveling to somebody else, those are weeks in which I'll give myself a pass on a weekly reading vlog. Any other weeks, I'll do my best to just pop in and say something, even if it's just talking about how I'm too busy to film a video and saying I'll see you next week. Now, to answer the obvious question, why am I filming a video now if I'm hosting them for the full month of December? They are actually, during the month that they're here, they're taking a 4-day detour to visit Angkor Wat in Cambodia, during which time I've got this room back to myself for 4 days before they come back here again. And then we're going to be traveling during the Christmas week, and we're actually going to be moving apartments at the end of this month. I know we didn't want to move apartments, but we have to for various reasons. And then spend most of January in my wife's hometown in central Vietnam. So you might not see a lot of me this month. Be forewarned, I guess. I should acknowledge, I say all this with the full knowledge that nobody cares about my system except me. But there you go. It's something that's of interest to me, so here I am talking about it. I do have a little bit of a book haul, which coincides with my parents coming out here. So whenever my parents come out, it's an opportunity for me to request books, because if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, getting books out here in Vietnam is always an issue, or getting specific books. I can walk into the mall and I can find some books, but if I want to track down a very specific title, that's going to be difficult. So my parents brought 2 books for me, and apologies for the fact that this camera is going to show them in reverse. I don't know how to fix that. But this one is The Linguistic Wars, Chomsky, Lakoff, and the Battle Over Deep Structure by Randy Allen Harris, which was actually, interesting story behind this, was sent to me by the author himself, or rather he sent it to my parents, and my parents took it out to me when they came out here to Vietnam. Now it's a bit of a. I'll get into the full story of our correspondence when I get around to actually properly getting into this book, which I anticipate being in February. But the short version is he came across my review of the first edition of this book, which is over here. You can see, I know this camera isn't great, but you can see both books here. So I reviewed the first edition of his book, I think, about 1.5 years ago now. He thought it was a good review, so I was pleased with that. And he wanted to send me out a copy here, so he sent it. I explained to him I was in Vietnam. He sent it to my parents, and they brought it over. And because he went to the trouble of sending this out to me, I do want to prioritize reading it. But as regular viewers of this channel know, I am, despite doing this as a hobby, somewhat of a terrible reader, or at least a very slow reader. And I've got a couple other books I'm working my way through now, and as I just said, the next couple months are going to be busy with traveling. But I'm planning on trying to clear out my reading time in February to get into this, and we'll talk all about it at that time. The other book I got was The Storm Before the Storm, the beginning of the end of the Roman Republic by Mike Duncan. So this Mike Duncan, of course, is the podcaster. And if you've been following this channel, I've been talking a lot about his podcasts on this channel, both the History of Rome and Revolutions podcast, which I've really enjoyed. This is his book, which he I think got the contract for writing this off the strength of his podcast audience. And if you listen to his podcast, you know that on the podcast feed, I think for both of his podcasts, he gives a free preview of this book in which he reads the first chapter like an audiobook. And I thought, listening to him read the first chapter, I thought that was really engaging. Now this is the history of the Roman Republic from the Gracchi brothers to Marius and Sulla, which actually is an era of history I know quite well. Read a few different books on that subject. But if there's a skilled storyteller, and I believe Mike Duncan is, it's always worth returning to that. Now, yeah, I saw this book in bookstores the last time I was in the U.S. back in 2019. I didn't purchase it at the time because I hadn't listened to the podcast yet, and I thought, I don't want to read this book before I've done the podcast. So do the podcast first, then get the book. Now, I haven't finished Revolution's podcast, which is why I am going to hold off before getting his other book about Lafayette. But I have finished the History of Rome podcast. So time to get into this one. This actually looks like a very slender read. Only 265 pages. Looks like fairly easy to read sentences. So whenever I get around to this one, it's I actually, part of me wishes this was twice as long. It almost looks a little bit too short. But it should be interesting reading when I get into it. Oh yeah, sorry. I mentioned the fact that I saw it on the bookstores in 2019 but didn't buy it. So I mentioned to my parents, and if you've traveled, you know that books are difficult to bring with you because you've got a weight limit in your luggage, and books will pick up that weight limit very quickly. So I felt like I could only request like a couple books. So I had them bring this one, and then I said, if you can fit one more book in there, bring this one. I said it should be all over the bookstores. But they actually didn't find it in the bookstores. I guess it was in the bookstores in 2019 when I was last home, but they had to special order it. But they said they had special ordered it easily enough. The other little book haul here is just a little pulp fantasy that was on the book exchange at my work, which I've got a soft spot for pulp fantasy, guilty pleasure. And this cover will just look like it would be a quick little fun read type thing. The only thing, it's the second book in a series. And so I saw it on the book exchange, and I passed it by several times over. Every time I would walk by the table, I would pick it up. But I said, I don't want to start with the second book in a series. But then eventually I just thought, I'll start off with the second book in the series. Sometimes it can be fun to kind of dip into the second book in a series, huh? Okay, so that's all the book haul stuff. In terms of the reading, sorry, let me jump back a little bit. I mentioned that I didn't do a video last week, but I did actually on my weblog just update my page counts, just so I can keep my page counts going. So I'll link that down below. Last week I did read 24 pages of the Odyssey. This week, unfortunately, I didn't read any pages of the Odyssey. I've been busy with work and hosting my parents and apartment hunting and stuff like that. And unfortunately, I think my days of juggling multiple books may be over. I was able to get a number of pages done with the Peloponnesian War, but I just was not very good at jumping back between two different books. I don't have a lot to report on the Odyssey. I'll try and do better next week. Peloponnesian War, I read 52 pages last week, and this week, what's my total up to now? Close to about 70 pages this past week. I'm finding it really interesting and at the same time somewhat boring. There are things in here that are absolutely fascinating. Things I find absolutely fascinating are the political factions in Athens that are arguing back and forth against each other, and the personalities in here. There are some larger than life personalities, particularly on the Athenian side. I guess this is because all of our sources for this war come from from Athens, so these tend to be from the Athenians' perspectives. But there's Alcibiades, who was this really charismatic Athenian politician who got involved in this scandal and then turned traitor and went over to Sparta. There's I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Nicias. I'm probably not pronouncing that right at all, huh? Nicias, maybe. You'll forgive me. I'm doing this reading, not listening to it. Who was the leader of the peace faction, but is being portrayed here as botching the war effort. There are allusions to Athenian literature and Athenian plays that are coming out during this period, although that doesn't seem to be Donald Kagan's primary interest. Or I don't know, maybe he's just limited by space. So there's all that interesting stuff, but at the same time, there is a lot of just battles. Like here's the Athenian army and talking about the right flank of the army and the left flank and how these armies were outflanking each other and the cavalry versus the hoplites. And that kind of stuff bores me, to be honest. Although I do realize that a lot of history nerds really love that stuff. A lot of history nerds are military buffs and love all this information about where the different battalions were placed before the battle and stuff like that. But I've always been interested more in the ideology, the personalities, the biographies, the politics, and that's in here as well. It's a little bit, it's often not the main focus, but there's enough of that in here to keep me interested. So I'm glad I'm reading it. I continue to be slogging very slowly through the Flash Gordon book. Part of the reason why is because this book, I just keep at home and then I read after the kids have gone to bed, and the kids never go to bed. But I've had this book out for a long time now, and it's actually going to be due back at the library in a couple weeks. And with all the traveling and stuff like that, I think I may just try to prioritize finishing this book. I mean, it seems a little bit silly to, on the one hand, it seems a little bit silly to prioritize reading a comic book when I've got, these classics here that are getting pushed aside so I can finish the comic book. But, library due dates. Let me see if I can prioritize finishing this and then maybe get a video done this week, maybe. We'll see. I can't really promise anything the next couple months. Yeah, and speaking of not promising anything the next couple months, you'll see me again whenever you see me, I guess. Although videos I've done since I filmed the last weekly reading vlog 2 weeks ago, right before my parents arrived, I finally finished off Tintin and the Prisoners of the Sun. Finally finished it off. This is. It's a book that should not have sat on my shelves for as long as it did, because it only took like 45 minutes to read. It's just like a comic book. But for whatever reason, I had let it sit on my shelves. And then just last night, because I had this room to myself again, I filmed a couple of videos that I've been meaning to film for forever, which is irregular verbs, the past simple, and then irregular verbs, the past simple and the present perfect. Past simple and the past participle. And this gets back to my other project on this blog, which is to record videos that are useful for English language learning students, as I'm an English teacher. And I've had these presentations made up. I made the presentations up, at least the basis of them, 6 years ago in one case. And I've just been thinking, as I've been learning how to record screens more, I should turn them into videos. This ties in with the project I've got about filming more grammar videos on this channel. The microphone quality is decent, I think. I've gotten a slightly better microphone. It's just at a frame here. I can't reach for it. It's still just headphones and something like that. And I've been using Zoom to make the recordings, which somebody recommended to me to do. It still sounds a little bit tinny, but I think, I don't know. I don't know anything about video recording or editing. I wonder if this is the best I'm going to be able to get it without investing in some, like Blue Yeti microphone or something like that. I don't know. Every now and again, I think maybe I should take this channel more seriously and try and do more professional type stuff on it, but not quite there yet, and definitely not going to be there in the next couple weeks. So yeah, I'll link to the videos I've filmed over the past couple weeks down below, and finish out here.